Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Oh boy. Okay, hey, good morning everybody. How you doing? It is Thursday, July 28th, 2022, the last July Thursday that we have left. The last July ever. We're going to just call it all off. That's what it sounded like at the beginning of this. But okay, everything upside down and backwards this morning, though thankfully everything is working on the technical end. But, just a little shake up to all the morning routine. Everything's fine. Just, I thought I had to go in 18 different directions, and I'll probably be getting emails and text messages and hopefully no phone calls during the next couple of hours, except one very particular phone call that we'll be waiting for when Greg Dworkin joins us. I don't know. It has eaten up my usual morning Twitter scanning time, so I don't know what the hell's going on out there, except what's on my screen right now. So if you want to influence the show, now's your chance. Use the KITM hashtag and screw with us. Give us some fake news stories. What the hell? No one ever fact checks anything here. Go for it. There's lots that you can do. Plenty of trouble that can be made. I noticed this morning, or I noticed last night as I was preparing my post for the morning to alert everybody to the fact that the show would be on, that... well, let's see. Is it up and available? Yeah, my morning notice to everyone that the show is live. And I was typing it out, and I was making my usual joke for this week. I've decided on a theme for this week about it being the last week in July, and just saying once again, I wish there were some more Thursdays left in July, but there just aren't. And it struck me as I wrote, I don't know why, I don't know how, I didn't write it out this way, but I said, holy crap. That was a haiku. I have accidentally haikued in the morning post. I wish there were some more Thursdays left in July, but there just aren't. Wow. Okay, so haiku done. And I figured, what else could you possibly need to know about today's show? Oh, here's some more texts saying I have to do more things. It really is going to be impossible. So... okay, well, at any rate, I can't take care of that now, but we'll see. But it might involve police, is all I'm saying, and that's it. An alarm went off that I'm responsible for, not at the house, but elsewhere, or that I guess I'm ultimately responsible for, because the usual person who's responsible for it is on vacation, and, it's disrupted things. So I don't know, if the police call or text, then something. All right. Well, I don't think it's been a while, so I'm hoping there'll be no police response. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the alarm was hooked up to the Uvalde Police Department and no one's ever coming. But at any rate, you don't need to know about that trouble until I have more details to share with you. All right, well, let's see. Aside from accidental haiku and the fact that Greg is preparing his raft of stories, we have a number of different things we could line up for today. Here's something. I just happened to open the email because it was sitting there as I was scanning. And one of our regular listeners and correspondents, Roger, who had sent something the other day. We were reading his email, but he had a question. This is an interesting one. But unfortunately, I think the answer is not particularly satisfying. But an interesting question nonetheless. In light of the recent effort to force Republicans to vote on things like codifying abortion rights, gay marriage, etc., is there some rationale for us to put forth legislation essentially negating the so-called Office of Legal Counsel memo, making the president immune from prosecution while in office? In essence, make the legislature vote on whether the president is or is not above the law, make the SCOTUS take a position, and I'm wondering what Armando thinks about this. Armando not here on it today. I don't know, maybe he's listening, and he's certainly welcome to chime in on this. We could put the question to him. My best answer, though, is, nah, not really, unfortunately. The Office of Legal Counsel, it's funny, a so-called Office of Legal Counsel memo. I mean, those two things, they do exist. There are memos. There is an Office of Legal Counsel. And, of course, the memo from the Office of Legal Counsel doesn't have any binding legal force. It's just like the next best thing. When the office, it's just considered to be a weighty opinion, but not much more. It's essentially strongly recommended policy that it be the case. And usually, ordinarily, the people working at the Office of Legal Counsel are the kind of people who, wouldn't simply issue such a thing without serious grounding in the law, and care about their reputations, and so therefore would not be involved in something, arbitrary and capricious, let's say, in setting or recommending that this be the policy for the federal government. But also, they are the kind of people who very frequently move about in these higher circles of constitutional law, and will be moving, former Supreme Court clerks, people who are sometimes destined for the bench themselves or the upper reaches of the Justice Department, or who have been there already. So that's the reason that those opinions and memos are given additional weight. Now, you can't make, of course, the SCOTUS take a position unless the SCOTUS decides they want to take a position. You can't force them to take a case. That's all up to them. You could try to formulate a case that they would be interested in taking, though I'm not certain how you could do that, and you couldn't rig it up for before election time or anything like that. So making the SCOTUS take a position is sort of a non-starter. They will either do it or not based on the cases that are presented to them, and they won't rule on hypotheticals. They don't give, they always say that in their confirmation hearings, I won't discuss hypotheticals, but also as a matter of doctrine, the court won't give advisory opinions. They will only deal with a live case or controversy, and only the ones of their choosing, for that matter. So that's very difficult. Whether or not the legislature could vote on something like that, they could, but again, this was executive branch policy, and they might not, especially these legal scholars, might not take kindly for the same reasons that we had objections that I expressed the other day to efforts to reform the Electoral Count Act. There would be similar separation of powers problems, and just plain, listen, I don't report to those guys, I don't care what they say. Policy here is we don't do this. So it lives somewhere other than in statute, which is the sort of thing that a legislature can speak to, and lives somewhere other than Supreme Court precedent, which is something that the courts could speak to. But this is the executive branch exercising their own power and influence through their own prerogative to issue these stupid memos. So, no, I don't think there's any real way to address that other than to set yourself up in opposition to it and declare it as a political position. And the typical response of the Office of Legal Counsel would likely be, so what? So there you go. I think that's the state of play on that one. Just thought I might sneak in an answer on that one. But it's worth thinking about, and it's always worth thinking about creative ways to bring these issues to the fore. So I appreciate it, Roger. And now Greg Dworkin, who's patiently waiting. I assume you've prepared all news in haiku, or perhaps diamante, or iambic pentameter. Any luck on that front? Good morning, Greg.
The iambic pentameter isn't finished, but I think that's really the way to do it. I'm working on trope and anti-trope, and we're trying to do it the Greek way, but all right. It's going to take a little more time. I will tell you this: Greek tragedy is certainly the word of the day. It's so weird. I was preparing, what to talk about today, and the stories that we do, and the Justice Department making it known that Donald Trump is a subject of their investigation.
Yes.
It's not even like the story. There's just so many other stories on this Newsy Thursday.
Right. It's kind of like, of course he's the subject of a Justice Department investigation.
Well, that's the thing. It's also looking at the reaction of reporters and others.
Yeah.
We know what's going on. We know that he's behind all of this. Mm-hmm. And you'd think everybody knows. And the reporters are going, oh, my gosh, the Department of Justice is making him. Part of it is the cynical reaction of they're never going to do anything, they're never going to do anything, they're never going to do anything. And then they did something, and now it's news because they did something. But if you hadn't have taken that cynical approach to they're never going to do anything, it would neither be surprising nor all that, newsworthy.
Yes.
The indictment would be, but that's not here yet. And it's not going to be before the midterms, and it's going to take a while because these things take a while. It takes years to put together cases sometimes. But the fact that they're letting it be known that they're working on it is obviously Merrick Garland's response. We said this the other day. He gave a Lester Holt interview. He got involved. He's going public. For him, this is a screaming, open the window, I'm mad as hell moment where he says, well, nobody's above the law. And let me repeat myself, nobody's above the law. Oh, my God, he's screaming at me. Why is he typing? Why is he tweeting in capital letters? Use your inside voice, Merrick. But it's real.
It is. And I'm just trying to think if you could turn I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore into haiku. But we're about a syllable short on that one, unfortunately. So now that I think
I can't make this into a haiku and I'm not going to take it
anymore. So therefore... Now that would be great. If that worked, that would be an excellent haiku. But we can't do everything in Japanese verse.
Well, you can't do it on the fly. You got to sit down and think about this stuff. That's the thing about haiku. It's quick, easy, and really deep because it's not so quick and it's not so easy.
Yeah, you got to really give it some thought. Okay.
But anyway.
I won't.
So, there's that. And then not only is the January 6th committee bringing stuff up to the public so that we now know why Merrick Garland is doing what he's doing. But what's also interesting is watching the Nazis react to it. Oh, and by that I mean Laura Ingraham and the Fox News people. And it's really quite interesting. Again, we talked the other day about the fact that Rupert Murdoch has had it with these folks. So, he's allowing the New York Post and Wall Street Journal to do editorials about how this is ridiculous that Trump did nothing on January 6th.
Yeah.
That doesn't affect the evening Fox News stuff necessarily, but it's not at all clear that Sean Hannity and Laura Ingraham and everybody else is going to be on the same page about this. Absolutely, the holdouts are going to be Laura Ingraham and Tucker Carlson.
You would think.
Because when the Nazis, do Nazi stuff, they do Nazi stuff.
Yeah.
Here's an example.
They're into that.
Last night. And who picked this up? Probably a sin over at
wherever he is.
Well, on Twitter.
Oh, okay.
Laura Ingraham said this Garland news should really disturb you.
All right.
And I'm thinking, what is she talking about? Final Fantasy? Garland is the villain in Final Fantasy. Okay. This Garland news should really disturb you. Garland is no better than the average prosecutor working for Vladimir Putin. And, why is she talking about a Final Fantasy villain? Oh, wait, she's not talking about a Final Fantasy villain. She's talking about Merrick Garland. And she's saying he's no better than the average prosecutor working for Vladimir Putin.
Is that a bad thing?
Rather than ignoring the whole January 6th thing, you can't ignore the Department of Justice, so they have decided that they're going to go after Garland because obviously the hunting of Donald Trump is totally political, and Garland has bowed to the far left January 6th committee is forcing him to do, ridiculous stuff. But just interesting that they've decided this is too big for us to ignore. We're now going to have to attack it.
That's good. I mean, that means it's on the radar and bothering them.
Exactly right. And so, the other thing is Fox News, of course, covered the daytime hearings. They didn't do the nighttime ones because there's these shows, but they did all the daytime hearings. And the news gets out, and really not much you could do about it, and that's really the significance of all of that. The other thing, of course, Ron Filipowski picked this up. The chair of the Claremont Institute, Tom Klingenstein, on what he wants, why he wants Trump in 2024 to run.
Okay. Why he wants that?
In war, you must make a stand. For that, we need strong men. Trump is a manly man. When manhood is being stripped of its masculinity, traditional manhood, even when flawed, is absolutely essential.
Mm-hmm. We need men in makeup.
Really, that ought to be accompanied by Trump in one of those sumo wrestler towels around your loins and nothing else, so his big belly hangs out, and then they could talk about how he's a manly man.
Sumo wrestlers are, I'm sure, pretty macho dudes.
It makes more sense than the Trump head, photoshopped onto Sylvester Stallone's Rambo body.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Because Trump doesn't have a Rambo body. I don't know, if people are aware of this. No.
Unless it's in the freezer.
Somewhere.
He's got one in his crawl space, but they love doing that, and they love to think he's a manly man. I love to, whenever they do that, pull out videos of him dancing on stage when they're playing the music, usually Macho Man or YMCA, and he like totters around on those two, candlestick pins of legs, tottering back and forth. It's very manly, and lots of people are wearing pancake makeup to change the foundational color of the facial skin, and I guess lifting big weights and shooting guns at the same time. So it's a popular thing to do.
Oh well, but that's just part of the news. The big news, of course, is all the stuff that your Senate and mine is actually accomplishing.
Oh, what? Something happened?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Well, a couple of things happened. This is interesting power politics. You can help explain it better than I.
Maybe. Not this one.
The Senate gets together.
Okay.
All right. And they decide
so far, so
that it's in the best interest of the country, with China looming as a major adversary, and the inflationary situation where a lot of the chips that go into things like cars are from overseas and hard to get, thereby driving prices up, that in the interest of the country, they're going to get together and pass what's being called the CHIPS bill.
Why not?
Which is, investing in domestic chip makers to help make and keep America more competitive. And you'd think that in and of itself would be a big story. First of all, because it's government intervention supported by Republicans. And second of all, it's a clear indication. And Biden critics can be Biden critics. That's certainly allowed and entitled, on our side and on everybody else's side. But the fact of the matter is, he claimed to get to Washington in order to get bipartisan stuff done. And this in the infrastructure bill, for example, and the reconciliation to follow, are examples of getting stuff done. And skipping reconciliation, which is totally partisan, this is going to be bipartisan stuff. And he's getting it done. Big things. And so, he won't get credit for that because people don't feel like giving him credit in this particular environment. That's fine, but he's doing what he said he was going to do. And so he gets Republicans to go along with it. And people like Sinema and Manchin help with that. They helped get the infrastructure thing passed, despite everybody's annoyance with them. And so this thing passes. And, fine. It's one of those things, all right, notch a victory. Republicans will claim it for their own, yada, yada. But wait. There's more.
Oh.
Mitch McConnell was threatening to hold up this CHIPS bill until or unless reconciliation was dead, because he could. It's a power play move.
Yes.
So Schumer goes around him. They get the CHIPS bill passed in the Senate.
Really understand it exactly.
And after it passes, Schumer says, oh, by the way, Manchin and I have come to an agreement, and we are going to have reconciliation, and it's going to be amazing because there's going to be electric vehicle subsidies, there's going to be climate stuff, there's going to be tax stuff in it. It's a really good bill. Manchin's on board with it. We're going to do it. And McConnell says, wait. I was going to hold up the CHIPS bill to make sure this didn't happen, and you told me it was dead, and then I passed the CHIPS bill, and now you're doing this.
That's crazy.
Or the way Adam Jentelson put it, in terms of power dynamics, passing CHIPS and then immediately resurrecting reconciliation would be a pretty epic win for Schumer and an embarrassing loss for McConnell. In terms of substance, it's a good deal. Certainly the best you're going to get, that is to say reconciliation. And better than what many thought possible at this late stage. Dems played hardball and they won. Take the win.
Okay.
So stop complaining about the new reconciliation bill that it didn't do enough. It does a lot, and it is hardball. And, of course, you have people on our side who complain that Democrats never play hardball, and then when they do, they complain that they play hardball. We see the same thing, and we talked about it yesterday with our discussion about interfering with Republican local elections. The Democrats never play hardball. Okay, we're playing hardball here. You can't do that. That's hardball.
That one I hear. Yeah. And this one, I think the complaint generally is, well, you're playing hardball, but not for high enough stakes.
Oh, hardball, but hardball this, but.
That's
and,
true.
You know, it passed, but.
Yeah.
It's a W. Take the win.
Yeah, that's true. It's a very insidery kind of win, but there is some substance to the bill. It isn't everything that all environmentalists were ever dreaming.
Listen to this. This is a punch bowl this morning. Shocking news Wednesday that Senator Joe Manchin and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer in the White House have reached a sweeping $740 billion reconciliation deal. Has rearranged the legislative and political outlook in Washington. It's given Biden and the Democratic leaders another unexpected opportunity to enact broad climate and tax code changes. And it should quiet complaints on the left that Manchin's untrustworthy and Schumer's too timid, at least for now. That is to say, for 24 hours. We spoke with Manchin about the agreement, which he hopes to accomplish, why now, whether Kristen Sinema will support it, and what the West Virginia Democrat thinks about his standing in the party. More later, but for now, let's focus on the broad brush political dynamics. For the first time in recent memory, Senate Republicans have been caught completely flat-footed by Schumer and the Democrats. 17 Senate Republicans helped Schumer pass the $280 billion CHIPS Plus bill Wednesday, and this came as Democrats had seemingly abandoned much of Biden's Build Back Better agenda. But hours later, Schumer announced his agreement with Manchin, outmaneuvering McConnell and Cornyn. Senate Republicans quickly responded by stalling a high-profile bill to aid veterans exposed to toxic substances, which made Jon Stewart unload on them.
Jon Stewart, he's still alive?
And Republicans are trying to see the political upside here. So GOP leaders are going to spend the fall hammering Democrats for raising taxes during a recession. This is petulant. We have to find something.
Yes.
Right? They lost on this. So now for the details.
Okay.
Here's the one-pager that Senate Democrats sent out last night on the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022.
Oh.
Which Lawrence Summers agrees with, by the way. And here's the legislative text. The proposal sets a 15% corporate minimum tax rate on billion-dollar companies. That nets $313 billion over a decade. The IRS gets billions of dollars of new funding to help beef up tax enforcement. You can see why Republicans are upset about this.
Yeah, they won't like that part. We'll see.
Especially for wealthy Americans, which will net the federal government more than $120 billion, Democrats estimate. I wish we could go back and pull some of the stories, I guess, from the 1920s. I think it was the 20s, where the first income tax was initiated.
Okay.
And the Carnegies and the Mellons and, you know, the Vanderbilts and all the huge mansions that you go visit now as historical sites were, like, really upset about it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what this is. And so the plutocrats are really upset that they're doing this, and so they told the Republican minions to go out and complain. The Medicare prescription drug pricing provision is included, although narrowed. Cut spending by $288 billion, eliminates carried interest loophole. On the spending side, Democrats would pour $370 billion into climate and energy provisions. And this includes funding for new hydrogen, nuclear, renewable, and fossil fuel programs, deficit reduction, $300 billion. And they're dramatically different than what Democrats propose in Build Back Better. Who cares? This is what passed. Celebrate what passed. So it's kind of interesting.
Unpassed yet, but yeah. Well, it is. It's good news.
No, wait. So we're not done with the story yet. So here's the question I'm going to have for you. Yes. So all of this happens. Great publicity for Democrats. Did it really? Good policy. Good politics. McConnell gets stuffed. All of this. So their response is, well, we haven't passed CHIPS yet because the Senate did, but the House still has to vote on it.
Okay.
Now, there is a 4-seat Democratic majority in the House, slim, but it's Nancy Pelosi's House.
Right.
And so, and some Republicans still want to vote for this CHIPS bill because it's good for their individual districts and because it's good for America, but mostly because it's good for them because it's good for their individual districts.
Yes.
So now Kevin McCarthy and Steve Scalise are going to try to put the arm on them to vote no and have it passed entirely with Democratic votes. And this sets up a really weird dynamic because Republicans want to vote for this and Kevin McCarthy's incompetent. And so there may be a couple of Republican votes. And so there may be some Democratic votes that want to vote no, But to vote no
Why?
will completely scotch the Democratic agenda and mean they won't get reelected in the fall. So my question to you is, how do you sort all this out in terms of the dynamics of the House and the fact that the House is now in a position to stick it to the Senate, and how do you say no to that?
Yeah, well, it's going to be very difficult for House leaders to give up the opportunity to stick it to the Senate, although I don't know that that's how they'll view it either. I mean, I think if you're wondering, like, why would
well, if the Senate is lobbying the House to vote no because you stuck it to us, how do they not look at it that way?
If the Senate is lobbying the House, oh, you mean the Senate Republicans?
Senate Republicans want House Republicans and the House in general to vote no on this because it's retaliation for you doing reconciliation.
Right. Well, you might, they might have considered perhaps keeping the lid on the reconciliation thing until this thing had passed the House. But I'm curious. I'm trying to think through, like, what's the major advantage of this? Institutionally, the Senate Democratic leadership possibly viewed this thing as why announce reconciliation and the deal with Manchin before it's passed the House, and that might be a way of strong-arming House Democrats into saying, well, look, we can't have any conference on this, and there can be no amendments in the House, or else we have to go through this all again.
And the Senate will vote no. They've already told us.
Right. So
you have to pass what's here. I mean, that's what I'm thinking.
I think that's about it. Now, why the House would appreciate that? They wouldn't. I think they would be actually
but the
quite
alternative is, disaster.
Right. But that's, and that's how they'll have to deal with it inside of the House Democratic Caucus. And if they get marching orders on the Republican side that it's a no vote or nothing, well, I don't know. They might get a vote from Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, although he went a little kooky nuts last night, too, as it turns out. These guys are still Republicans. So I'm sure it'll be a close shave, but I think they'll be able to force it through. The House won't be thrilled.
Sup fam, it's your boy Darwin, aka Darwin_Darko, aka the most reasonable man in America, aka KITM's senior black correspondent. You might remember me from such recordings as Spacemen vs. Space Cadets and We Need to Talk About Joe Biden. Today, I want to bring you good news about that thing you've been struggling with. Do you suffer from giving too much of a damn? Do you turn on the series of tubes and find yourself outraged at the particular way some news organization strung some sentences together only to realize, nope, this is not some fictional hellscape? Well, guess what? You no longer have to accept the life of giving too much of a damn. You can do something about it, because even you, yes you, can be a show contributor. Now I know what you're thinking. Hey, Mr. Most Reasonable Man in America, I'm not some professional podcast talking guy. Don't worry about it. Do you have a smartphone or some other electronic recording device? Well, that's all you need. You too can have a segment where you can read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Fair warning though, side effects may include general punditry, having opinions and hot takes, getting stuff off your chest, and hearing your own voice. If your recording lasts longer than 5 to 7 minutes, please consult kagrox@gmail.com. That's KAGROX@gmail.com.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. So we'll continue on with our analysis and discussion, all built around this deal that they built. And I do note for
and
the
kept
record,
secret. Schumer announced it, and Durbin said, "I didn't know it was coming."
Oh,
he's number 2 in leadership.
Well, okay, yeah, that must have been.
But he has COVID, so nothing's going to be voted on for at least 5 days.
But so does Manchin. So I'm not really sure. I mean, or at least I heard the other day that he did. Maybe he got over it really, really quick. I guess he's been working. Maybe he has minimal symptoms. He's been able to work this deal out.
Maybe he gave it to Durbin, and that's how he gets out of the deal.
That could be it, too. And, of course, no word
Dick, I want to have
cinema.
coffee with you.
Now, get out of my way. Yeah, I will say I too had a cynical response to this stuff. When the news broke yesterday, and I think I saw the Hill reporting, breaking Manchin and Schumer announce a deal on this big reconciliation bill. My reaction was, good news, everybody. A 50-50 chance that there's actually a deal.
Yeah, Manchin's I know.
Involved.
They annoy us. But look, I mean, you have to step back and also put some other perspective on it. Sinema, especially, and Manchin, were responsible for getting Republicans to go along with the infrastructure bill. Manchin is from a coal state, is a coal baron himself.
It's really not much.
Gets all his money from coal.
Yes, that's true.
And he agreed to climate change stuff.
Yes. He definitely put his own goodies in there, but he did agree to those things. It's a pretty...
I thought that would never happen.
Long list of, liberal priorities. Certainly, not a wish list.
I have read, behind-the-scenes stuff from the reporters saying, all that pressure on Manchin actually had an effect. So kudos to all of you who are screaming at him. Because he was really uncomfortable with the fact that everybody was blaming him for the complete collapse of Build Back Better. He thought he had a plan to sort of do it Mitch McConnell style and slowly, quietly kill it. Really. It wasn't quiet. He couldn't get away with it. And so he reconsidered. Okay. And I think what focused his mind was not because the brilliant progressives went after him. He was looking at the landscape and saying, if we lose this, we're going to lose everything. And what good am I if I'm in the minority?
Everybody played their role in that.
I mean, if we have a 50-50 Senate, I'm king.
Yes.
If we have a 51-49 Senate, not so much. Yeah, and if it's 49-51, I am useless.
Yeah, pretty much. I guess it could always... I'm sure that people have prevailed upon him to switch parties if that was the case, but I think that he's... I guess that's not actually appealing to him, and it's easy to see why.
So this is David Leonhardt, who I don't love, but this is the New York Times morning newsletter. A deal for now. Joe Manchin's climate announcement has the potential to be a very big deal.
Oh, well, so much for that.
Right. If a package of policies doesn't pass one year, it might pass in a future year. Climate policy is different, and goes on to point out how the United States has uniquely important and central role in fighting climate change. And until yesterday, the Democratic Party seemed as if it were on the verge of squandering a major opportunity to combat climate change. But Manchin appeared to change his mind. He announced he'd agreed to include hundreds of $billions for climate and energy programs in a bill that would also reduce prescription drug prices, raise taxes on the affluent, and shrink the federal deficit. Sounds like a kind of big deal.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sort of thing that, well, first of all, that's the sort of thing that he actually kind of sort of does want to do from time to time, and wouldn't be available to him as even as a part of a Republican majority. That would just not be on the agenda.
Right.
And West Virginia still does enjoy the benefits of things like that.
Right. Another story from the New York Times. Surprise deal would be most ambitious climate action undertaken by U.S. I think Schumer wanted to show that Merrick Garland isn't the only person who can do things without everybody knowing about it. Look at me. Look what I did.
I guess. Although I will say I've never heard of Chuck Schumer wanting to do something that everybody didn't know about.
But he did.
Yeah, there's a new trick for that old dog for sure. Of course, then there was the press conference about how nobody knew.
Well, when did you think that you were going to read stuff like Chuck Schumer runs rings around Mitch McConnell, who was surprised and taken aback by what happened?
Yeah.
I don't know, but I like reading that. Let's do it
might
again.
happen right after he fell on his patio, but I guess not.
Yeah. Surprise deal would be most ambitious climate action undertaken by U.S., says the New York Times. The announcement Wednesday almost instantly reset the role of the U.S. in the global effort to fight climate change. It also almost instantly reset the whole perception of what Democrats are getting done in Congress. It's a big deal in just so many different ways.
Yeah, well, I hope they get it over the finish line.
I'm telling you about the publicity it's getting. Look at these stories.
Yeah.
Right? Here's one in the Hill. Biden investing $401 million for high-speed internet for 31K rural residents and businesses. That's something they can run on in 2022, for example. At the same time, Biden's student loans, also from the Hill, Biden's student loan plan shrouded in mystery. Nobody really knows what's going on with it.
Yeah, that's true. It is. We don't know where that's headed.
There should be a bigger story, except that all the stuff we just covered is bigger and crowding it out a little bit.
Maybe we should say that the student loan deal is secret and no one knew about it.
Well, that could be.
I mean, because it is, sort of.
Right.
No one knows.
So what's happening now with the political climate? Well, as it turns out, GOP fundraising, writes the New York Times, Republicans confront unexpected online money slowdown. Shane Goldmacher says it this way. GOP fundraising dropped 12% in second quarter on Win Red, alarming Republicans who expected growth. those who expected the economy to grow saw a slight contraction this quarter, smaller than the contraction the quarter before. 2 quarters in a row does not signal a recession. We'll know we're in recession when people stop hiring, and that hasn't happened. Democratic donations surged 21% as GOP cash sagged. Remember, we were talking about this the other day. Yes. The Republicans are blaming inflation for this. But if that's the case, why is Democratic donation up? Right. And why is Republican donation down? Obviously, the answer is Roe/Dobbs and other things. And if climate change was a motivating factor for younger voters, we're about to find out, because this big deal is a big deal. The result, Democratic online money edge widened by $100 million from quarter 4. So that's a big deal. And at the same time, not only did the Republicans confront an unexpected online money slowdown, Karl Rove had an editorial in the Wall Street Journal, where he is prone to write editorials. Where did Trump's donations go? He can't spend his PAC millions on 2024, and he isn't using it in the midterms.
Yeah, well,
You can read the whole story, but those are good questions.
Can I? I don't know. Yeah.
It's almost as if it's all going in his pocket.
Well, it is. And now why does this upset Karl Rove? He's not getting it, I guess. Usually people raise millions and spend it on consultants like Karl Rove, but he's not getting any of that. So I don't know. I mean, I guess that upsets him. I don't think that there's any. I don't know if he has any particular problem with it being stolen. It's just he doesn't like that he's not stealing.
Yeah, I mean, but he, in perspective, he says the Republican leadership groups, the Republican Senatorial Committee, the National Republican Congressional Committee, that's the triple DC, equivalent. Republican National Committee, they have $174.8 million, and Trump has a war chest equivalent to 70% of that. And he's not spending it on anybody
else.
And so he's upset. Yeah. So one option off the table is converting that money to a Trump presidential campaign, according to federal election lawyers. If he decides he has to upstage the midterms and announce rather than waiting, he'll immediately need to file a new committee for his presidential campaign. And I guess they can't use the old committee. But more interesting than that is the RNC, who I guess is annoyed that Trump isn't spending that money on them, has announced that if Trump announces for the presidency, they're stopping paying his legal bills.
Yeah, and now's a good time to want to do that, too.
And why are they paying his legal bills anyway?
They never should have been.
But, they won't do that. So, stuff is going on there. And a lot of it has to do with the slowdown in money. So now everybody wants the money, and now they're looking at Trump and saying, hey, you have the money. We looked the other way when everybody was flush, but now that we're having some money troubles, what's going on with the money that you're stealing from us? Yeah,
whatever happened to that? Can you give us the ill-gotten proceeds? Yes. Okay, well, then we're all good. But if not, then go screw yourself. And I note, by the way, you said Democratic fundraising, generally speaking, up about 20%, and
21%,
Republican down 12%, so like a 30% difference, swing in the takes here. Yeah. So, okay, that's pretty serious. You can't be heading into midterms with a negative trend.
Right.
Unless you've got secret money from, I don't know, Russia or mobsters.
Right. Says the New York Times story, for the Senate Republican Committee, online fundraising plunged by $6.7 million. Top Republican Senate candidates, even those whose fundraising ticked up, are falling well behind their Democratic rivals in the cash race. The money's so pronounced that Raphael Warnock raised more online last quarter, $12 million, than the combined WinRed quarterly hauls of Georgia, Wisconsin, Florida, Nevada, Ohio, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania Republicans. Now, money alone doesn't win political races, but obviously it's a big deal. And so
it does.
Some Republicans have polled their donors to ask about why they're not giving, and according to people familiar with the results, inflation was the top answer. That's what Ronna McDonald said. Still, inflation's role is being hotly debated because it hasn't affected Democrats.
Yes.
Well, they're motivated. Well, maybe it's motivation, not inflation.
Could be. Yes, all right. And, I see some more reporting about the dramatic turnaround among Republicans. And I guess, let's see, what's the reporting here? Manu Raju reporting that some House Republicans who had planned to vote for the CHIPS bill that you mentioned have now reversed their position. So they were on record saying they were for it. Now they're against it, now that Republican leaders have whipped their members as payback for the Manchin-Schumer deal. But they do still expect to pass the bill in the House because, there is a Democratic majority, and it says it's on tap for today. So very good. Now
so after that, then you can celebrate the fact that McConnell got railroaded.
Yeah.
Right? You want to wait till after the bill passes? Then, let's talk about it Monday.
Yeah. Right. Well, let's digest that for the weekend.
Political terms, that,
like
just a second. So, meanwhile, again, there's other things that are not going that well for the Republicans. Inside the GOP freak out over J.D. Vance's Senate campaign. We've talked about Herschel Walker, who's a lying liar who has no trouble lying to the camera because he's a liar. J.D. Vance is an empty suit, and that's really the story here. Sam Brody and Roger Sullenberg are covering this in Daily Beast. Republicans are increasingly concerned that the author-turned-MAGA crusader is running the worst campaign you can possibly run. As one radio talk host put it, you can't find him with a subpoena. That's what they're saying.
Yes, I like that line.
There was one problem. The stage Vance took was in Israel, 6,000 miles away from Ohio.
Well,
the spectacle of Vance gushing in Tel Aviv about Israel's high birth rates to a friendly audience seemed to distill for some Republicans everything that's wrong with his campaign. Back in the Buckeye State, many are still waiting for Vance to show up. Apparently, he skipped the kissing babies and going to state fairs part of the campaign.
Oh, yes. He's gone directly to, well, he views himself as a already existing political celebrity who can run the sort of campaign that his name recognition and popularity will carry him through, and he doesn't have to do retail politics.
Right.
Interesting.
Others say it's not just they don't see Vance pounding the pavement. Privately, some aren't even getting calls back from him or his campaign to discuss how they can help. And that includes campaign donors whom Vance literally cannot afford to lose. The candidate's fundraising has been anemic, and because he's carrying debt from the primary, Vance is in the unenviable position of asking donors to pay off debts.
Because he's a fiscal conservative.
Right.
Yeah.
When the fundraising numbers came out, it is full-on panic now, one of the state politics GOP source said. It's code red. Meanwhile, Republicans begrudgingly admit Democratic nominee Representative Tim Ryan is running the best possible campaign from a Democrat in Ohio.
Well, good.
And Ryan has raised $12 million for his campaign so far. And he's using that war chest to blanket Ohio airwaves with ads touting his blue-collar bona fides.
Oh, that was good. The blue-collars love the Latin pronunciation.
Right. Well, it's better than doing white-collar mens rea.
Right. That sounds like a malady of some kind. I think a little penicillin would probably take care of.
Yeah, I don't know if penicillin will, but a stiff prison sentence would.
Oh, okay.
With Vance largely absent on the airwaves and the campaign trail, Republicans fret that Ryan is successfully defining himself before Vance is, and that his time is running out for the Republican to right the ship. It's the same story we got about Herschel Walker. Time is running out for the Republicans to right the ship.
Okay.
Well, the Senate is looking increasingly better for Democrats. In fact, Simon Rosenberg thinks the Democrats are going to win the Senate, and the only question is, what happens in the House. And Howard Dean says, well, Democrats are going to win both. That's Howard Dean, but he said, no, I'm looking at polling. I'm looking at internal polling, and I'm a lot more positive about it than you guys are.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think Simon was somebody was quoting him basically saying this Schumer-Manchin deal, if they can make it work, changes things entirely. New election, as he put it. I think I'm not that excited about the bill, but it'll be pretty good and a good 1-2 punch. The Ohio thing, I will say, at this point now, I'm worried about the expectations we set up here, but it certainly sounded good. If you can't win Ohio when the Republican candidate is A, jerk, B, inexperienced, and C, running the worst possible campaign, while the Democrat, who's well-known statewide there, is running the best possible campaign, I don't know what that means, but...
It means that Ohio's becoming Kentucky is what it means.
I guess so. But fingers crossed
that
it'll work.
But even in Kentucky, you have a Democratic governor.
Yeah, that's true. The Vance thing is real interesting, and I guess he also thought he could run the campaign in a box thing, except he packed and shipped his own box, and that it doesn't work like that.
Well, again, probably you should be keeping a separate spreadsheet about how campaign in the box doesn't work in this situation, how campaign in the box doesn't work in that situation. We're looking at it in terms of the CHIPS bill.
There are definitely drawbacks.
It's not working there. Well, we're doing what leadership told us to do because that was the deal. I get to go to Congress and they tell me what to do, and it should be that simple. And for some reason, it doesn't seem to be working out here.
Yeah, well,
we're in the minority. How is that?
He's just not running. He's not. It's not what he's doing to campaign about. He's trying to redefine the box for everybody else because this is kind of what happens with pundit turned politicians. They're not going to accept.
You mean like
Mehmet
Oz?
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not really I don't know what he is. He's I don't know what.
He's a celebrity.
Fake health guru, celebrity.
He's a celebrity. Celebrity turned politician, pundit turned politician. What's the difference?
That's true.
They're both empty suits.
Yeah, well, if you follow the playbook, who was actually adept at following a playbook? I mean, the conditions were right for him because he was, in Alabama. But Tommy Tuberville, okay, who's going to follow a playbook? A coach is going to follow a playbook.
Well,
he writes playbooks. He understands that. Now, he's terrible at doing it, but it was Alabama.
You're telling me
so
that Tommy Tuberville won in Alabama, and that's an evidence of him being a good political campaign.
No, it's evidence of him not, saying, you know what, I'm going to redefine everything.
Okay, he's not Roy Moore.
He's not a pundit turned politician. He's somebody who knows. Look, I don't know anything about politics. Just give me the script and I'll say it. J.D. Vance, of course, is above that. I am the one who writes scripts. Everyone else should be following my campaign in a box. He's sure that the path he took to celebrity will work as politician. Because I guess he saw Donald Trump do it. And it's like, you know what? That's a different situation. You're not him. Hardly anybody is. That has not worked for anyone.
Tuberville does have a certain degree of experience, though. He has, successfully navigated the Auburn-Alabama divide, which is enormous.
Yeah, true.
I mean, for those of you unfamiliar with it, that would be like somebody managing to straddle the Yankee-Red Sox evil empire, Red Sox nation divide.
That is a major accomplishment. But really, also, it
takes a little politics to do
at
that.
What it takes to rise to the top levels of any profession. There's always some politics and maneuvering involved in it. And he had to make sure the right people were on his side in order to get hired as a coach. Afterwards, you have it made, perhaps. But
but if it's competitive in Mississippi, there's a blue wave.
Yeah.
If it's competitive in Ohio, then there's no way you could argue there's a red wave.
Right. At least that. Okay, well, I think that's very interesting. It couldn't happen to a better target, I think, J.D. Vance. I hope it comes back to bite him in the ass and then he can write another stupid book.
And make a movie out of it. So this is the Jolt writing Atlanta Journal-Constitution, their political column. As Biden notches wins, Georgia Democrats hope for a boost. I mean, again, the political implications of what's going on with Manchin are enormous. And so that's why I have always counseled patience with him in cinema. I know they're annoying, but, at the same time, you get stuff out of them.
Yes, that's true. We think so. I mean, no indication so far. We've given every opportunity, that is to say, we've been on the air for a few minutes, and Kyrsten Sinema has not texted that she's not voting for this thing yet. So I guess maybe she's on board. I don't know if she's looking for some way to hold the thing hostage, but I think she's probably
she'll feel
under
a
a lot of
pressure for her entire caucus with the election coming up. So,
right.
I'm not as worried about her.
They might be saying to her now,
she's weird, but she's not stupid.
Yeah. And she's not, she doesn't tend to jump in and be the one to blow things up. She will go along with Manchin. She'd like
to be the second person to blow things up.
Yeah, right. And I don't know. So far, they're probably, leaning on her pretty hard and saying, come on, everybody's on board, even Manchin. Hopefully that works. I don't know. And she could be grabbing the spotlight right now and having everybody looking at her, and she's not doing it. So I guess that means, okay, why not? We'll do it. Right. So yay. We'll have a moment to celebrate the two of them doing the right thing and say, oh, yeah, now I remember why it's
my Twitter friend, Reverend Testimony. He has his own podcast that occasionally we show up on. I was talking about McCarthy and Scalise getting outmaneuvered, and his response was, hey, even Manchin's on board. McCarthy really sucks at this.
Yeah. Well, he's very bad.
He's very bad. He's not very good at this. I mean, a good, true, competent House Minority Leader would have been prepared for this. And so he wasn't whipping, but now he is whipping, but it's going to pass anyway. That just looks terrible for him.
Yeah, I mean, he is the minority leader. There's not a great deal that he could expect to accomplish in the face of a determined majority, but he's also got no record of accomplishing things. Even when he's part of a majority leadership, he's no good. So he has never been top dog in a Republican majority, and it doesn't look like he will be either. So good. He is truly incompetent. He's, you got to be a smart person at some level. You might be reluctant to acknowledge it, but you have to have some smarts going on somewhere. Paul Ryan, as much as he was a poser, he was an articulate guy, and it sounded like something was going on in his head, even if it was bad stuff. Not so with McCarthy.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't mind seeing Kevin McCarthy discuss with a D.C. grand jury about what actually happened on January 6th. The way that Mike Pence's people are.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I don't think we can say this enough. We probably said it yesterday. We should have said it last week. But Mike Pence is such a coward.
Yeah.
He is having all of his staffers. I mean, one of the things I look for in leadership, personally, is how do you treat your staff?
No.
How do you treat the wait staff when you're at a restaurant? Well, Mike Pence in his speech was complaining about the fact that he had to wait at Olive Garden for a table.
Right. Well, when you're there,
how do you
family,
treat
so
your own personal staff when they have to go and testify to the January 6th committee and or grand juries, and you won't because you're a coward?
Yeah.
That says everything about your leadership.
Has he been asked?
The January 6th committee would be more than happy to hear from him. I can't say anything about the grand jury. That's secret.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not certain whether anybody has asked him, and I don't know what the reluctance would be, but I don't recall anyone even requesting it at the January 6th committee that Pence testify. And
they wanted to hang him. He should be goddamn volunteering.
That's true. When can I go next? I have questions. I do now think that they need to follow up and ask. I'm waiting. I don't know if there's a transcript available of. I know that there was closed door testimony from. What was there from Milley? Did General Milley testify, or did he just offer comments to the press? I can't recall. That would be a weird thing. I don't know if. It should register bigger that you've subpoenaed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So maybe they didn't get testimony from him. But I know that he made those comments about, and I assume he was trying to build up Pence as a big hero by saying he had spoken to him. And he stepped in when the president wouldn't. And he gave us orders to send the National Guard to the Capitol. And he was so resolute and forthright and gave unambiguous orders. But I still have questions, and I'm wondering if they'll go back and ask these questions. Like, General Milley, why did you take orders from somebody who's not in the military chain of command? I know that sounds like it was maybe the right thing to do in the situation, but did you guys discuss at any point the fact that he was vice president? And technically, since this whole day was about how Pence wouldn't do things that he didn't have constitutional authority to do, why was he doing this thing that he has no constitutional authority for, even though it sounds like a good idea? And did he give you an answer, or did you just say, I want to do it, you want to do it, forget the Constitution, let's go? I have lingering questions.
I'm going with the dereliction of duty theory.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, was there any discussion like, if you would just say you're relieving the president of command or some magical words or something, I would feel a lot better about sending troops, or maybe he just said...
This is Steve Bannon actually writing in Rachel Maddow's blog, MSNBC, a week ago.
Yes.
Let me send this to you. Why the Joint Chiefs Chair talked to Pence, not Trump, on January 6th. There's a military chain of command, and Pence wasn't supposed to be part of it, but he took on a leadership role because Donald Trump created a vacuum.
Yeah. That's
the same way as saying dereliction of duty, and that's why.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm wondering whether there was real discussion about that, because there's some missing steps in between. I don't know. I think he's doing a really bad job, and you should listen to me with respect to military. Although then I'd also say the likelihood that General Milley was involved in, mobilize the D.C. National Guard. He probably was like, okay, I agree with that's a good move, but you got to call another guy. I'm not doing that, and I'm not in charge of that. But
Right. So what Benham writes is, under normal circumstances, the Joint Chiefs Chairman and the Defense Secretary wouldn't consider taking orders from a sitting vice president.
Right.
But everyone involved in the governing process seemed to come to an implicit understanding as the Trump era neared its end. The office of the presidency was empty. Yes, there was a person behind the desk, but since he lacked the will, wherewithal, and interest to do the job, folks like Pence started giving orders, and the rules that are supposed to dictate our system of government were simply overlooked for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it, but I really feel like, I'll tell you what, as much as it was the right thing to do, I have big questions if General Milley is okay with the idea of sometimes our rules should be overlooked. Well, I mean, the commander-in-chief duty, the ability to dispatch the armed forces, I mean, you have one job, sir. I mean,
in January 2018, Benham writes, as one of Trump's government shutdowns got underway, presidential historian John Meacham said, well, this is what government looks like without a president. And more than 4 years later, it's a quote that continues to resonate for a reason. So basically, everybody came to the conclusion is we have to. And so we're going to. And, if you want to point out from a policy and procedure point of view, there's no precedent for this.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't. But now there is.
Right. But yeah, so what that to me means is I'm going to need some testimony from either or both you, Milley, or Vice President Pence. So
you can legislate how to do this.
There was a gigantic breach of protocol on everybody's understanding that a whole article of the Constitution thrown out for expediency's sake. I like the thinking. I like that you took the initiative. I now need you to put your name on it, because what you're saying is you relieved the President of the United States of military command in the middle of an insurrection, and nobody will say they did it. Where's the courage in that? I can't find it. Like you said, he's a coward. He's a coward, and you're correct.
And to finish off, because we're at the end of the hour, this is Sam Youngman tweeting. For all the talk about how Biden has lost his step, the pressure really comes to terms with the fact that McConnell isn't McConnell anymore. He's got repeated gaffes. He's been undermined by Rand Paul, other members, and now he got rolled by Manchin and Schumer. Yeah. So where is he?
Right, getting ready to retire, I think. So good. He's had a long run, and good. I'm glad for the news. Thank you, by the way, for sticking around to take us all the way through the hour, and we appreciate it. And a great setup on all these things. Thank you, Greg.
Take care. We'll see what you do in the next hour.
Yeah. Well, won't you ever? You just watch.
You just watch. Or
we'll
listen.
See you next week.
As the case may be.
If you watch, you're going to be bored. Hey, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show. What is it? This show called Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Netroots Radio, a part I never forget. Okay, who I am? Well, occasionally I lose track of that. Yes, so I know I've been hammering on that theme for a long time, but I got a chance to restate it again to Greg, and I enjoyed doing that. But this is a fairly serious thing we're glossing over here. And I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that thinks this way, but I'm thinking that if there's more talk about it, some reporter somewhere who can really influence things, or some legislator somewhere, or some constitutional scholar somewhere, you know what? I could pull a inside out and backwards job on this one, and I could probably interest Jonathan Turley in doing this and saying they should never have dispatched the troops to the Capitol on Mike Pence's say-so, and come up with some sort of constitutional crime to charge Pence and or Milley with in retaliation for their turning on Trump. But that would be interesting play. But really, this is a major question that needs to be answered. And they can elide the whole thing. And maybe this is it. Maybe the whole press corps is just skipping to the end, which is, this was a major mistake. And we're just going with, hey, the action fit the moment. Everybody knows that we needed to do that. I agreed that it would be okay to dispatch these people on my own authority if necessary, but the fact that I had agreement from the Vice President of the United States is of some importance. We're not talking about it, but I mean, raise your hand if you didn't think it was a good idea to dispatch the National Guard to restore order at the Capitol. Big mouth. Anybody? No, I thought not. So, I think they're just sort of thinking that the fact that they were pretty sure they were doing the right thing is supposed to pass for maybe bravado here, but I don't know, to the extent that you are about preserving constitutional order, you should really come to some discussion about that. And I mean, you've invented a brand new doctrine here, and it is possible to do this, right? I mean, I'll spend one more second on it. Like, the fact that there was no real basis for doing this, I guess, well, let's see. Should we examine, what was really done? I mean, I don't know for sure. Milley said what he said, but I don't know if push came to shove whether he would testify under oath that what he got from Mike Pence were binding military orders. I think he might just say it was a matter of, it was a little bit of puffery. I was trying to build up Pence because I was, proud of his having refused to go along with the election stealing coup plans as laid out to him by Trump. And I was impressed with that, and I would really like to let everybody know that I think he was heroic for doing that. And so I'm going to build him up and paint him as a big, resolute, tough leader. And I'm willing to say he ordered me around, all right. He ordered me good. And I said, yeah, awesome job, tough Rambo guy. We're going to use the military just like you said. And then when push comes to shove and he's put under oath, he will say, he knew that he didn't have the authority to order me to deploy the military. And I knew that he didn't have that. And I knew that he knew that I knew that I didn't have the authority, or he didn't have the authority. But we all agreed that that was what should be done. And so, to the extent that I had authority to either order it myself or to get out of the way of it being dispatched, or just say, oops, that was a mistake. I really should have waited for some sort of authority, but I went ahead and did it anyway. They could come down to it and just say, okay, sorry, mea culpa. I admit that we should have waited for authority from the president, but we knew that wasn't forthcoming. And in the excitement of the moment, it was a pretty dramatic moment, and help was needed, and we were willing to render it. And I think the right decision for the country was to render it. We said, let's go. And we were talking to the Vice President of the United States, and he's an authoritative guy. And it slipped my mind for the moment that, oh yeah, the Vice President isn't just the Vice Commander in Chief. He's somebody completely different. And I regret that, and I would have done it differently had I had time. Having reflected upon it, I would do things differently. I think I would still dispatch the military, but I might say, I'll need to do this on my own authority, or, sir, I need you to invoke something here and tell me you're relieving the president of command, although I wouldn't recommend doing it that way because, like I said, that creates a whole new constitutional doctrine out of whole cloth. But having done it, in effect, and having had no one object to it, that raises some questions too. I'm a big fan of reminding everybody that there was, it's not binding law or anything, it's Supreme Court dicta, but the Frankfurter opinion in, where was it? What was it in, might have been in Youngstown Steel, now that I'm thinking about it, but maybe something else. But in one of the major constitutional cases about the limits of authority under the Constitution for various branches, that if at some point somebody exercises authority that's beyond what's explicit in the Constitution or in precedent around, decided around the constitutional limits, and the other branches don't object and put up a fight about it, but everybody simply accepts that this is a good idea, whether under the circumstances or in general, for us to go forward with something like this, and it becomes standard practice. And we're not quite at the standard practice stage yet. It has only happened once, but every time there's been an insurrection at the Capitol, this is how we've handled it, right? And no one makes any objection. Then, as Frankfurter put it, it kind of becomes part of the gloss on the history of this sort of procedure, and it's like, okay, that did happen that time and nobody raised a fuss, so maybe it's okay. You might be able to avail yourself of this again. And besides which, if you are considering based on precedent, like what are our options again if the Capitol is under attack by domestic insurrectionists? That's the least of your problems at that stage of the game, whether or not you have precedent to lean on under, Felix Frankfurter's framing of the gloss of history. Like you got bigger problems at that point. But that should be settled. And I would like to reiterate that they really need at some point, whether it's a part of this investigation, part of the January 6th thing, part of, I don't know what, but presidential historians, somebody's got to sit down at some point, and maybe it can be, on Mike Pence's deathbed or when Mike Milley writes his memoirs, if he ever does something like that, and say, we need some clarification about the conversation that took place between you two. Did you guys, talk around the problem, or was there a direct assertion by Pence of his own authority? Because, you talked up about how he was so clear and unambiguous. Are you telling me that he was clear and unambiguous, we've got to get troops here now and you should do it? Was he, though, maybe not so clear and a little ambiguous about why he had the authority to do that? Did it not come up? And if it didn't come up, then I ask, General Milley, you had one job here. Are you telling me that if somebody basically makes a prank phone call to you and says I'm outside of the military chain of command. Hi, sir. General Milley, Domino's Pizza here. We really need the military. And everybody would agree that we absolutely do have to have military assistance here at Domino's Pizza in Connecticut Avenue. I don't know if there is one there. And certainly the country would thank you for sending the military. And everybody just agrees to do it? Or is it the fact that he's the vice president and you think most people won't know that he's in the chain of command? Or is it that it's some hybrid thing? Maybe, I don't know. I haven't heard it from any, constitutional lawyers. Well, maybe they have spoken up, but maybe somebody with a better understanding of the dynamics as between the presidency and the vice presidency. Because after all, remember that the vice president, we did learn when we learned about how close he came to danger on January 6th and it made his dash for security in the loading dock from out of the holding room that they were holding him in when the Secret Service moved him, that he had an aide with him, an Air Force aide that was carrying the nuclear football, right? Well, you might ask, well, maybe this is one of those strange places where the law is in a gray area, the constitutional gray area around the vice president. It's a hybrid position. It's an executive branch position, but it's also, remember when, maybe this is okay with Liz Cheney because Dick Cheney was pretty adamant about his occupying this weird position of maybe some fourth branch of government that doesn't really count as executive and doesn't really count as anything else. He's the president of the Senate. Is he a legislative branch person? He's the vice president of the United States. Is he an executive branch person? He seems to have some influence in both of these realms, but he's got the nuclear football with him. Why does he have the nuclear football with him? Of course, because in an emergency, if there's some sort of strike against the United States or some other thing happens, and the president is incapacitated, which he was, in 2015 or so, he began his long stretch of being incapacitated, but he was incapacitated, unreachable, whatever, or if, I think the contemplation is if he's taken out in an attack or is otherwise assassinated or falls ill or whatever, then the duty falls to the vice president to act as acting president. But you kind of have to, I imagine there are things you have to do. Like even when Trump is didn't he get this, as many presidents do during their tenure? Was he put under general anesthesia and I think in this case for a colonoscopy, but it happens for a lot of things. But I assume that, and I'm pretty sure I've read that whenever they cover one of those stories and the vice president is acting president for the time being, that there's some paperwork or ceremonial something that goes on that marks the occasion, and we document everything at that level. So what got documented about this? Are there magic words he had to say? So I'm very curious to know whether they just pushed that aside or whether they really had that discussion. And if they had that discussion, that seems super important because, I don't know, because what? I'm not really sure, except that I guess it maybe then goes to Pence's subsequent cowardice for considering, say, something like invoking the 25th Amendment. Well, gee whiz, that could set the country on its ear because it's never been done, et cetera, et cetera. Well, neither has usurping the military chain of command. But you did that. Well, not really. I actually talked my way around it because I'm so decisive. Some aspect of this has got to give. And the safest one is to say, he wasn't that decisive after all. We all just decided to wink and nod and say, look, if I send troops and the troops restore order and then somebody says, you're not allowed to have sent those troops, well, order will have been restored, right? They're not gonna say, you know what, you're right. Rioters, come back. What were we thinking? So order will be restored and let them prosecute me for it later. So that could have been a decision, but then you're going to have to say that, and it's going to diminish the shine on Pence's supposed bravery and forthrightness that day, which is fine by me. Go ahead and do it. So anyway, maybe that's my motivation in pushing for this. I don't know what else it could be. All right, what have I got here to share with you? Well, there's plenty. One, I'll follow up. I'll double back on something I alluded to the other day and fill in the blanks if you still have them. I included it in yesterday's roundup, but not all of you necessarily read every word of the roundup and click on every link to see what we were talking about. But I mentioned that in California, Governor Newsom had signed legislation or had been presented with legislation and signed it that he called for in the immediate aftermath of Texas's SB 8 law, the one that granted vigilante bounty hunter authority to private individuals to chase down people who they believe may have gotten or sought abortions in violation of Texas's X number of week ban at the time, or purported ban, now actual ban in the wake of the actual overturning of Roe v. Wade. But once everybody saw that the Supreme Court allegedly was going to uphold this scheme by which the clever Texas lawyers felt they had evaded the ability of the federal courts to step in and say, no, a government actor can't do this thing. It can't prevent people from getting abortions prior to the federally recognized limit, number of weeks, whatever it was. But private actors can do this and have the effect of preventing people from doing it by threatening to impoverish anybody that the bounty hunters were able to find. That was the mechanism. Well, then the same mechanism ought to be available to us on a number of previously recognized federal rights, like, for instance, one that conservatives would not like to have this happen to, guns and gun ownership and gun purchases. Now, it may be that the ultimate result of this exercise is to expose the Supreme Court's hypocrisy and gimmitarianism, but I think that might also have been one of the aims. And along the way, if you can do something about the proliferation of guns in this country and gun violence, so much the better. And if you end up losing in the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court is forced to say, what we're aiming at here is gimmitarian at bottom, and I can't really come up with a good explanation why you should be able to invalidate people's privacy rights by using bounty hunters and private actors, but you can't do that with respect to guns. I have no logical reason, so I'm just going to lie and say there is something really that tough for you to understand, but I can't express it, but nonetheless you lose. There's something to be gained by that. Everyone will have another reason to disrespect and not believe in the institution of the Supreme Court. You know, you might think that's nothing, but it's a step in the right direction. And why not? Why not pull a stunt like this? If Republicans are going to play to their base and run for president in the future based on stunts like this, why shouldn't Democrats be doing it as well? It's framing and messaging, just like anything else. So, what about this bill? What are the details of it? I don't know offhand. So, I grabbed this piece from the New York Times from July 25th, which is what, Monday? What to know about California's head-turning gun control law. This is a step up from my hated construction of the headlines. Usually they are very arrogant about it, and maybe they're listening to me or having the same feeling. I hate when they say, what you need to know about California's head-turning gun control law, because you're stupid. We want to just make sure that it's little bite-sized bits and pieces for those of you who are too dumb to understand all the things I, the big brain columnist, know about these things. We know you can only absorb so much. Here's what you, pat you on the head, need to know about this. Or, but this is just, well, here's what to know. Here's what I know. Now you should know it. I like that. They've made it's a dramatic improvement. But by the way, you know, even so, I still say, just looking for things to nitpick on. What to know about California's head-turning gun control law? Why, effing everything. Thank you very much. That's what I should know about it. Why won't you tell me? Well, maybe she did. Sumya Karlamangla. My best guess at this name, and it's really not that difficult, but it's not immediately recognizable. It's not a sight word for me, so I'm going to... So, Sumya, Soumya, Karlamangla, Karlamangla. I don't know what good this does, spelling it for people. If you're listening live, the chances of you grabbing a pencil and saying, I'm going to check this out, are minimal. And... whatever. It makes me feel better for, you know what it is? I'm spelling it for you like, oh yeah, I'd like to see you read this out loud on the spot. But probably a lot of you are like, duh, it's easy. Maybe Sumya is listening and says, I don't understand what's so hard about this. But she probably runs into this a lot. More to the point, she has some important things to say about that damn gun law. Let's read it. By one measure, Californians are about 25% less likely to die in mass shootings, hooray, compared with residents of other states. Now, that's because there are so many more people around you to absorb the bullets, I think. But also, there's just not that many mass shootings for whatever reason going on there. So that's good news. Our state's low rate of gun deaths is at least in part because of our strict firearms laws, experts say. But after a number of devastating shootings across the U.S. this year, California is now tightening those gun rules even more. This month alone, Governor Gavin Newsom has signed into law more than 10 new firearm restrictions. So, by the way, for those people who are saying, you know, nothing happens after these mass shootings and nobody does anything, state actors are moving. Some state actors move in the opposite direction. That is true. But some state actors move in the right direction, too, and we ought to say so. This month alone, Gavin Newsom has signed into law more than 10 new firearms restrictions. These include fresh limits on gun advertising to minors. That seems like a good thing, too, right? You know, if you can restrict tobacco advertising to minors, certainly you'd have a hard time arguing against gun advertising to minors. So take that win. Increased inspections of dealers. And a 10-year ban on firearm possession for those convicted of child abuse or elder abuse. I like that variation, too. Okay. Other items in the article. We continue after a couple of ads here. The most high profile of these laws allows Californians, this is the one we're after here, to sue anyone who distributes banned assault weapons or ghost guns. The legislation, which Newsom signed on Friday, is modeled after a Texas law that allows private citizens to sue anyone who aids and abets in an abortion. Okay, if they are going to use this framework to put women's lives at risk, we are going to use it to save people's lives here in the state of California. That's the spirit, the principle behind this law, Newsom said during a news conference on Friday. And he floated this very early on. I mean, it occurred to him very quickly, and many people, very quickly after SB 8 survived judicial review. And I'm glad to see that they actually followed through on it and gave it a try. The governor's decision to co-opt Texas's legal strategy, use it against them. Very good. And take out ads attacking Republican governors in Florida and Texas has been turning heads in national political circles. My colleague Sean Hubler, 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 I don't know, fun B, so Hubler, explained in her latest article. Today, I'm going to walk you through what you need to know. Oh, too bad. What you need to know about California's latest and most controversial gun bill, the capstone of the sweeping firearm legislation that Newsom has approved in recent weeks. I know that she doesn't mean this in a mean way, but really, people really ought to think about how easily offended I personally am and tiptoe around me. Because I have a microphone, damn it. So why not? All right, so what exactly does the new law do? That's the name of this next section. So it seems like an important one. Senate Bill 1327. And also kind of drives me crazy when they keep the bill name. If it's passed into law, you know, you can tell us what it is. Public law, whatever it is. And they haven't maybe codified it yet, so it's not a section just yet. But it's not a Senate bill anymore. I'm just a bill while I'm sitting on Capitol Hill. But I hope that I'm going to be a law, right? Oh, I hope. Why am I singing at this stage of the game? But that's the way we learn this thing. But that bill was very proud to turn into a law. It was a big deal. He got a new sash and a new seal to put on himself. He was very dejected about being a bill. And I want to respect this document's feelings. But that's the way we learn to discuss it. So Senate Bill 1327. We still call SB 8, Senate Bill 8, by that name. So anyway, it allows Californians, get ready Californians, to sue anyone who distributes illegal assault weapons. Californians are probably still asleep at this stage of the game. But if you're listening on podcast or you're an early riser, you can get to the courthouse first. You can sue anyone who distributes illegal assault weapons, parts that can be used to build weapons, guns without serial numbers, or .50 caliber rifles. The law also allows people to pursue legal challenges against licensed firearms dealers who sell weapons to anyone under 21. Under the law, awards of at least $10,000 per weapon and legal fees will be awarded to plaintiffs who successfully sue. The law is set to take effect in January, but it includes a legal trigger that would automatically invalidate it if the courts strike down the Texas law. That's a clever one. If you go first and get rid of your law, we'll get rid of ours. We're serious about that, and it's only based on the logic here. Very interesting, and a good tool, I think. By the way, so I was thinking about this as I was reading along. The one first thought that occurred to me here is it allows Californians to sue anyone who distributes all these things: illegal assault weapons, parts that can be used to build weapons, guns without serial numbers, .50 caliber rifles. And it occurred to me, like, okay, at first blush, first thought here is, when you sue people, you make people mad, right? And they want to get even with you or get back at you in some way. And I'm thinking, like, if you're suing people who have enough of these weapons that they're selling them wholesale or whatever, like, okay, maybe that's not such a great idea. These are petulant people, maybe angry people. They might have anger issues. Maybe they have a little bit of lead poisoning, and they're in possession of these illegal assault weapons. Should I be afraid to sue them? Now, under the law, you should not, because, of course, if they come after you, there'll be remedies at law. You might be dead, but there'll be remedies for your estate. But don't be afraid, go ahead and do these things and hope that they don't want to become murderers, except generally speaking, people who have .50 caliber weapons, illegal assault weapons, parts that can build ghost guns, etc., all secretly kind of hope that they will become murderers one day, but that they'll get away with it. They're hoping for that. But then it occurred to me, just, as a fun thought experiment, because murder is fun to think about, remember that the Texas law that they're reacting to is about abortion. And remember that they swear on a stack of Bibles, and it is a stack of Bibles that they use to swear on for things. They swear on a stack of Bibles that people who pursue abortions are murderers, right? So, I mean, shouldn't they be afraid? They, after all, are suing people that they are pretty sure are already murderers. Why don't they think they'll come and murder them? And the answer is because, of course, they don't really think that you're murderers. That's not a concern for them. P.S. They also have a lot of guns, and they figure they'll be the real murderers if the two of you ever confront one another. But I don't know. It's just sort of interesting to think about, right? Everyone thinks that the people on the other side of this is a bunch of murderers, but only one side will actually pause and think, geez, maybe I don't want to get involved in a vigilante lawsuit against people like this. And it's not the ones who are accusing anybody of already having committed a murder, though. I find that very interesting, and just an interesting philosophical inquiry into what's really going on here. What's really going on here, of course, is the people who say that abortion rights activists are murderers are lying, and even they don't really believe that about them. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, the same guy who was just talking to you a second ago. Our Patreon subscription drive is still going strong, with over 175 monthly donors who help keep us on the air. If we've helped keep you going during the pandemic, why not return the favor and help us keep going so we can all be together for the next disaster? Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it easy to make secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. Maybe you'd like to thank us for keeping you sane during the Trump era. Maybe you're looking forward to in-depth explanations of what's going on in the Biden administration. Whatever it is that keeps you listening, we need your help to keep bringing it to you. And hey, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running with those options too. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We literally could not do this without you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Still trying to take care of a little business on the side. It's rather difficult to do both things. Where was I again? Oh, yes, right. I was talking about how everybody's a liar and or a murderer. That's right. Here's what you need to know about your being one or both of these two things. We left off saying, under the law, awards of at least $10,000 per weapon and legal fees also will be awarded to plaintiffs who successfully sue. And don't worry about suing people that you think might get mad and shoot you. After all, they think you're a murderer too. So you should all be on even ground here. And as you know, a murderous society is a polite society. So no one will be threatening anyone else. It's just an interesting thing when you get right down to it, that I think the general perception is, yeah, you should be worried about threatening or suing gun people because they really are murderers. But you should probably not be worried about suing people involved in abortion because really at bottom everybody knows that the people who say that they are murderers really don't even believe that they're murderers. Not that you would be able to convince them otherwise. Rhetorically, I insist that they're murderers. I'm not afraid of taking them on because I don't believe they'll really murder me, but that's really because either they're afraid to murder anybody who isn't a defenseless baby, as they would probably put it if you painted them into this corner, or because, shut up. I'm going to put a gun in your face. Leave me alone. That's another way that they might elide the question. The law is set to take effect in January. I don't know why they're waiting, but it includes a legal trigger that would automatically invalidate it if the courts strike down the Texas law. That seems super clever and super well targeted. Why wait until January? No explanation. Maybe to give the courts the time to come around to invalidating. We'll give you a grace period before we start prosecuting people, or what? Or I don't know. Or maybe it might have been that they asked for testimony from the attorney general there in California, and he may have said, "We're willing to do this, and we'll be prepared to prosecute." Oh no, well they wouldn't have any role in all of this. I don't know. It might just be that's just standard legislative practice. They don't like to do things very often that are immediately effective. Probably because even though the Attorney General wouldn't be the one responsible for enforcing this, they might ask for sort of a study period. Let us figure out what issues are going to arise and be prepared. Give us a couple of months so that when this thing is finally effective, we have some grounding in what we're doing. That's my guess. But you'd have to ask, who is it? Is Javier Becerra the Attorney General in California now? Call Javier and ask him. Where did the idea come from? And the answer is Texas. In December, Newsom called for legislation that would allow private citizens to enforce the state's gun laws. He was responding to the U.S. Supreme Court's declining to block a Texas law that gives people the power to sue anyone involved in someone receiving an abortion, from the doctor who performs the procedure to the Uber driver who dropped the patient off at the clinic. Under that law, oh, by the way, I think you should be able to sue the manufacturer of the car the Uber driver drove, too. Why not include that? Under that law, plaintiffs are entitled to $10,000 and their legal fees recovered if they win. Newsom tapped State Senator Bob Hertzberg, a San Fernando Valley Democrat, to shepherd the California bill through the legislature. It was introduced in February. So kudos to Senator Hertzberg for carrying that through to completion. Who opposes it? Why, no one. All right. It's actually an unusual mix of gun rights groups and, this is, them doing their job, the American Civil Liberties Union have spoken out against SB 1327 in a letter opposing California's legislation. They're doing the consistency thing. The ACLU warned that Newsom was empowering a legal framework that he is trying to condemn. And, right, two wrongs don't make a right. Well, they might, especially if it's written into the law. Well, I'll tell you what, if you get rid of that wrong, I'll get rid of my wrong. That won't allay the ACLU's concerns here. So we understand what they're doing. We admire and share the governor's commitment to reproductive freedom, and we do not take issue with his legitimate concerns about the deadly proliferation of illegal guns, but there is no way to take advantage of the flawed logic of Texas's law. The letter reads, the law is expected to face legal challenges that could ultimately land at the Supreme Court. So actually it's quite clever. Like if you've angered litigious gun rights groups and the ACLU, not angered, but, raised the hackles, let's say, of the ACLU. You've angered the gun rights. Well, they may already have been angry. You've added to the anger of the gun rights groups. And you've, raised the hackles, the professional hackles at ACLU. Someone will sue, and that's fine because it's meant to get to the Supreme Court, to give them an opportunity to say, you're right, this whole thing was stupid. We never should have allowed it in Texas, and we're striking it all down. But, this also may result in a 6-3, 5-4 conservative court decision that we don't know why yet, but for reasons, Texas's law is okay. And California's isn't, because we don't like California and their stupid liberals, yargle bargle, something, and that'll be it. And then at the very least, you have demonstrated, there's no such thing as a Supreme Court anymore. It's just a bunch of partisan jerks who do what they want. And maybe even that is of some interest. That's the end of the article. There's some places to go for more about that. Let's see. It's really more about guns and our gun problems than the legal issues involved. So thank you for that. I appreciated having that, and I appreciated the reformulated headline, even though you blew it in the body of the article. And I wonder whether maybe the article's author went with the standard what you need to know, and maybe, they always say the headlines are often written by someone other than the piece's author. The headline writers at the New York Times know that that's a terrible construction of things. So it's probably just coincidence, and they just maybe it didn't look good to have the "you" in there, and the headline didn't break properly. It might have been something as dumb as that, as opposed to listening to me. I wouldn't listen to me. Anyway, that I thought was of some interest. Speaking of gun issues, because we are, I saw something just before the beginning of the show today that I responded to. I think it was, I'll scroll back and see if I can find it, but another sort of gun-related, shooting-related thing. Well, let me look at it in my own Twitter responses. I'll find my retweet of it, and I'm pretty sure. Where is it? Do I need to reload here? But at any rate, it was news from where? Indiana, I think. Here we are. Our good gun-watching friend SFDB adding to the ongoing collection of tweets about our NRA world. Usually these are gun fail stories or also just stories of the misuse of guns in general, even if no bullets were fired. But in this case, grabbing this tweet and commenting on it from WTHR.com there in Indiana, and the commentary on it from SFDB. 19 people have shot themselves while handling guns over the last 30 days in Indianapolis, Indiana alone. I had the word alone. It happens a lot. It's true, and it's gun fail, and it's interesting that people are noticing it. One of the goals of pointing all this out was to try and prompt other reporters to connect these stories because, you know, there's very often a little blurb in the news somewhere that somebody accidentally shot themselves sitting in the car, usually in the parking lot at Walmart because they were getting out of the car, or they were adjusting the gun in their waistband, or they dropped it, whatever dumb thing that happens. And, you know, my aim was to show just how frequently that does happen. And you all remember the motivation of it when, you know, they were proposing, let's give all the teachers guns. If you give enough teachers guns, teachers will start accidentally shooting themselves or others or having other accidents with their guns. And indeed they have. So, you know, but a local reporter ought to say it's not just a matter of, yes, we've covered the situation because a guy shot himself in the parking lot at the Indianapolis Walmart yesterday, so we put it in the paper. And then 6 days later, somebody accidentally shot themselves, allegedly cleaning their gun, sometimes in an apartment, and it goes through the wall and it shoots somebody else in the next apartment. And, you know, they fulfill their obligations by saying it happened, but that no one would be looking for and therefore not notice that, you know, there's a pattern of things here happening. I was hoping local reporters would do this, and here's one instance in which they have, and we'll see if we can figure out the provenance of it. WTHR Channel 13 in Indianapolis reports that the police say accidental shootings on the rise in Indianapolis, according to IMPD. 19 people accidentally shot themselves in the last 30 days. Author of the piece is Karen Campbell, whose Americanized name makes it easy for me to read on site. Thank you, Karen. You might change your name to something more challenging to give us all some bit of additional interest in the article. Police say accidental shootings are on the rise in Indianapolis. According to IMPD, 19 people accidentally shot themselves in the last 30 days. And there's a link here, which is interesting. It's sort of it's a link to a search of the WTHR.com domain, searching for the words accidentally shot, which is terrific. And I mean, not the accidental shooting part, but that people are essentially reporters are doing what I've been doing for how many years now on gun fail, looking for those things. Oh, and I did see somebody, by the way, mentioned the other day, just out of the blue. It must have occurred to them, but I appreciated the way they said it. They had said something like, "I'll never forget." I've forgotten, so I'm glad that you didn't forget. I'll never forget how me, Kagro X, had said at some point on Twitter about how I look for those stories, how I compile those stories, and try and get a comprehensive list of what's available online by searching for these terms. It's easy, you know, it doesn't teach you very much to say, yeah, I search for accidentally shot. But one of the ways I turn up additional stories, or at least used to, and this made a real impression on this person who tweeted this the other day. I'll never forget how Kagro X said he searches for the phrase "in the leg" on Google News to turn up. That's all it is, in the leg. Could be anything, I guess, right? In the leg. But what other things do you really? There are a few other stories like, ow, I got a fork stuck in my leg at a local restaurant or whatever. Or, I don't know, lots of things that could happen, but, it's easy to weed those out. But you'd be surprised at how many stories that turns up, and there's really not much else that is expressed that way. And the vast majority, to no one's surprise, but to our everlasting horror, searching for news articles with the phrase, nothing else, just in the leg will show you how many people got shot, but only in the leg. But that's a place where a lot of people get shot. So far fewer in the arm, and in the neck is not that helpful, but very often you will turn up stories about that too. People can get shot anywhere. So where were we? Ah, yes. According to IMPD, 19 people accidentally shot themselves in the last 30 days. There were 8 accidental shootings in the last 7 days, including a man who was cleaning his handgun. We always kind of think that's, where's my censoring harm? That's sort of bull, usually. But I think it does happen. A lot of people think that those are stories, that's cover stories, and they're fake. But I've explained in the past that semi-automatic handguns in particular are very often dismantled for cleaning. It's the only way to really clean them. And that, unfortunately, the design of them is that you will have to pull the trigger in order to release the mechanism so you can break the gun down. And if you're careless or don't know what you're doing, or you're in a fog, or maybe you have long COVID and have brain fog, something like that, you'll forget that there's a bullet in the chamber. I've taken the magazine out, like it shows on TV, but I haven't checked the chamber. I pull the trigger to break the gun down, and kapow, shoot myself. So that may be what happened there. The firearm accidentally discharged and struck him and his spouse, said IMPD officer William Young. I guess that's about the man who was cleaning his gun. And that might have been forgive the pun, the triggering event for this article and the search. A little bit awkward there, but police say accidental shootings also happen when gun owners holster their weapon or stick it in their waistband. That is true. Transitions are the most dangerous time for the gun fails. And you remember way back, if you're a really long-time listener, that was actually one of the problems on campuses where in states where they're trying to jump out of the way and allow people to carry, like college students, to carry guns on campus. And they thought, well, maybe we'll put gun lockers outside of classrooms, and people can carry on campus, but they can't carry in the classroom. And we'll have secure lockers where you can take your guns off and store them during class. Of course, the gun rights people said, well, the whole point is to have it in class because that's where, mass shooters show up. But, okay, aside from that argument, one of the more serious arguments was, and this one really made sense. Well, the vast majority of gun accidents happen during these transitions when you're taking the gun off, putting it on, and to insert an otherwise unnecessary transition into the daily process is to invite such accidents. Anyway, police say accidental shootings also happen when gun owners holster the weapons or stick it in their waistband. You are responsible for your firearm when you are handling your firearm, Young said. And I always say, treat every firearm as if it is loaded. You're supposed to. But that, too, is a rule that's frequently violated, especially by gun enthusiasts who then just say, well, yeah, I know that's one of the cardinal rules. And yeah, I know that's one of the reasons why I say that guns are safe, that guns don't kill people, people kill people. And if you just follow the gun rules of safety, you won't have these things happen because guns are inanimate objects and they don't fire themselves. They tend to get fired quite a lot. People make a lot of mistakes, but they just say, I just won't be negligent. Again, let me reiterate, one of the reasons why I still stick with that construction of accidental shootings. People give me hell for that all the time. It's not accidental. You should say it's negligent. You should change the framing. Yes, but when we say gun negligence causes these things, gun enthusiasts don't register that. They don't understand that. They don't care about that. They ridicule that. I won't be negligent, therefore I won't have this problem. To me, saying it's accidental and talking about how often people have these accidents probably comes closer to making them think, and they really never do. But if we're going to have any chance of making them think that this could happen to me, I think it's going to have to be by saying, yeah, but 1 million people a year say they're not going to be negligent, but then have such an accident. It is an accident. After all, you're not planning for it. You can't plan not to have an accident. You think you can plan not to be negligent, but the truth is you can't. Anyway, Where were we? Treat every firearm as if it's loaded, which they then fail to do when politicians, for instance, now love posing with their AR-15s, and they are usually pointing it at their own feet or at one of the family members if they're making a Christmas card with their guns. And we say, oh my God, what are you doing pointing a gun at your child's head? And they say, relax, it's not loaded. And we say, remember when you swore on a stack of Bibles, as you probably did, that you would never, you would treat all guns as if they were loaded, and that was one of the cardinal rules and why you're to be trusted as a gun guy with having guns around other people. And now it turns out you're full of it. Yeah, and they say, all right, but don't enforce that against me. Big deal, it's a mistake. You're such a liberal idiot, I hate your guts. And then, whatever, we move on. What's even more concerning is when a child gets hold of a gun in a home. Same for me, and I still have to provide proof to lots of people, gun enthusiasts and otherwise, that yes, 2-year-olds can pull triggers. They can do it. Don't believe they can't. That doesn't mean you can. And just because your kids are, when they're toddlers, are short, doesn't mean that the gun can be up high and they won't find it. They will. And one day you'll forget to put it up high on top of that. Whenever we hear something like that come across the radio, it kind of makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, because a lot of our officers and firemen, they have children, a 6-year-old or an 8-year-old. So it's concerning, said Young. And you'd be surprised how often it happens in cops' homes and firemen's homes. And why do firemen in particular have guns? It doesn't really make a great deal of sense. The reason is because they're tough guys, and everybody thinks manly men have guns. So they go and get them too. Oh no, cops have them, so we should have them too. Why have guns? Not really sure. I don't know. Doesn't really happen with, are people walking around saying, I'm in the Coast Guard, so I ought to have a bunch of guns. I don't know whether that happens among coasties or not. Maybe. They're military. Anyway, he said safety is key. If you're handling a firearm, get some sort of safety lock for that firearm. Always a good idea. The enthusiasts argue against it. I need to have it on me at all times. What if an alien beams into my room and I have to shoot him? Put it somewhere safe where a child is not able to get a hold of it, or even someone who is not a responsible person, like adults who are jerks. Also, be careful and mindful where you store your weapon inside the home. Don't put it in a toaster oven, as people have done. Don't leave your gun in a drawer, said Young. Pop-up ads. Don't leave it in a drawer. Oh gosh. All right. Don't leave it on top of a refrigerator. Yes, and I know that's not just a random throwaway. I was actually going to say, toddlers who are young and short, you can't put it up high. I thought to myself, why say on top of a refrigerator? Just anywhere up high will serve to suffice. But yeah, believe it or not, putting on top of the refrigerator is like a popular choice. Like, I don't know. Oh my God, have you smelled this milk? It's gone bad. It could jump up and kill me. I got to shoot them. I don't know why the refrigerator is a place, but it is. The bedroom drawer, I kind of understand. Top of the refrigerator, very popular. Not really sure what's driving that, but then, between leaving things on top of the refrigerator and leaving them in bathrooms, that's the new mania for people who are particularly new to firearms. Don't put it on top of the refrigerator. So many times we see folks that say, oh, I'll put it in a drawer hidden away from my children. That's not practicing good gun safety. Online resources like Project Child Safe, which I think is actually is that the NRA's thing, or is that, I don't know. Maybe not. No, I guess not. Maybe it is. Project Child Safe offers resources like free gun locks and more to help prevent another accidental shooting. But anyway, people don't go for it and they don't take advantage of it. I'm not sure why that's the case. Didn't really mean to spend that much time on guns, but, kind of a passion pointing out how many dumb things happen. All right, let's see. Other things I have put away. Lawrence Tribe tweeting yesterday, and I haven't seen a news article about it yet, but maybe I can grab one to see if there's more authoritative word on this. But Lawrence Tribe tweeting yesterday, latest news. DOJ has now obtained a warrant to search John Eastman's cell phone. Sounds good. Why? Maybe you thought they already did? No. DOJ has had the phone. They seized his phone on June 22nd, but now it has judicial permission to search its contents. To get that warrant, DOJ had to specify the crimes that it has good cause to believe the contents will reveal. So a judge has agreed. There's a pretty good chance that there's a evidence of criminal activity on that phone. I will now give you a warrant to search it. That's good news. I hope they find it, and it'll be exciting to know what they learn from it. And remember that word is that Ginny Thomas was in pretty close contact with Eastman, probably via text, so maybe some of that evidence will come to light as well. So let's see. Is there any news articles about that? What are we talking about? Eastman phone, shall we now say search, and then see what we got about this in the news. Anything? U.S. gets warrant. Reuters says U.S. gets warrant. Should we read Reuters or Politico or CNN? What do you think? Maybe Politico, because they'll get all political about it and maybe screw things up. Feds get new warrant to search contents of pro-Trump lawyer's phone. The developments came in response to a legal effort by John Eastman to block investigators in the January 6th probe from rummaging through his files because he's such a Fourth Amendment enthusiast. Kyle Cheney, Josh Gerstein reporting this yesterday. Justice Department revealed on Wednesday it had obtained a new search warrant to access the contents of Eastman's phone, which it seized last month before transporting it to a lab in Virginia. The development, filed in court via Assistant U.S. Attorney Thomas Wyndham, came in response to a legal effort by Eastman to block investigators from rummaging through his files. Didn't work, I guess. The DOJ has indicated that it would obtain a warrant that would limit investigators' access to the evidence of specific federal crimes or specific types of material. Wyndham indicated in the filing. So, if he's got like an Ashley Madison meetup in there, we won't talk about that. But we do think there's some other crimes in there, unless the meeting was with Ginny Thomas, in which case maybe. Wyndham indicated in the filing that the new warrant, dated July 12th, so it's been a while, they've kept quiet about it, included a filter protocol to prevent investigators from accessing privileged material, and that the details of that process had been communicated to Eastman's attorneys. Eastman is a central figure in the investigation, of course. He helped develop the coup strategy. Wyndham's filing is a milestone of sorts because while his identity had been known in media reports for months, before Wednesday, the Justice Department never confirmed his involvement in the January 6th related investigation. The filing also indicates that Wyndham is now working as an assistant U.S. attorney as part of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. A spokesman for that office made no comment about Wyndham's role and portfolio. The court filing is also an important development in the Justice Department's evidence-gathering process related to Eastman, which has been underway for well over a month. On June 17th, DOJ obtained a warrant from the federal magistrate judge in Albuquerque, New Mexico, authorizing that seizure of his electronic devices and allowing officials to use Eastman's face or fingerprints to unlock the devices if necessary. However, that warrant did not permit investigators to actually examine the emails, text messages, or text devices on those electronics. FBI agents confronted Eastman on June 22nd, obtained the cell phone using that initial warrant. Video of the encounter shows Eastman repeatedly asking agents to see the warrant, which they revealed to him after taking his phone. Eastman quickly filed a motion to compel the release of his phone, but guess what? It appears to have lost, claiming deficiencies in the search warrant and the possibilities that prosecutors would comb through files that should have been protected by attorney-client privilege. U.S. District Court Judge Robert Brack denied the attorney's motion earlier this month, saying Eastman's claim that the government intruded on his rights were premature because the second warrant had yet to be issued and investigators had yet to examine the data. So no harm yet, so therefore no foul. Now they've set up a screening protocol. What they'll probably do inside DOJ is say people who are not working on the case directly and who will be, as they say, firewalled from working with the case will be the one to search the contents, and they will do a preliminary search and determine what they think is relevant and accessible under the warrant, under the strict terms of the warrant, and they will separate out everything else that either might have privilege or is personal or is otherwise unrelated to the investigation and turn over to the people who actually work on the investigation only that material which they think would be permitted under a court's examination of what's there. So that's the way they handle those things. And good news. And maybe we'll see something developing along those lines in the next couple of days. Although whether they'll leak it to us, I have no real idea. All right, getting to the end of the show. That means I can't share with you this information, which I have more about the Electoral College Reform Act. I do want to go there again. Friday's coming, though, and that's usually our chance to get into things like that. Let's see. Anything else that we can squeeze in about this? Well, no, nothing that we can fit in, but I do want to return to, I guess, a major topic of discussion these days, Lee Zeldin and the attack he endured the other day. And I don't know, it's becoming a weird thing about the way this attack is being handled and reported. And there are definitely some strange details. You may already have heard those details. We might want to talk a little bit about that tomorrow. But we may talk about any number of things. And speaking of talking about any number of things, Justice Putnam comes up next with, of course, the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, which is all about a large number of things every day. And I can use this time to, at a more leisurely pace, tell you what those are. And to do it in the format he provides for us. You know, there's a whole script every day, and every day I run out of time to tell you what it is. Here's what's up. And, you know, he has a little title for his show every day, a little for each episode. The Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. He is a chef, right? It's a cookbook. Starting off in the Bistro Cafe, the DOJ is honing in on Trump's involvement in the fake electors scheme. Greg told you about that yesterday. And has also obtained phone records from Trump insiders. And that might be more than just Eastman. Then, on the rest of the menu, judges blocked abortion bans that were ready to take effect in Wyoming and North Dakota. So that's like 6-10 people affected. You know, there's not a lot of people in those states, but there are more than that, of course. So good news there. Tens of thousands of North Carolina felons can now register and vote. And maybe they should move to Wyoming and vote there. The outgoing director of the federal prison system refused to accept responsibility for a culture of corruption and misconduct that has plagued his agency for years. There's still more, and I can squeeze just a little bit more about what's happening internationally in after this short change of voice.
Radio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the morning.
That's right. I should do the rest of this in this voice. After the break. Can't do that. We move to the chef's table, where China rejected a report that it tried to obtain Federal Reserve data. Yikes. And over 1,000 Lufthansa flights were canceled as German ground crew staff went on strike. All that and more, as we usually say, on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam next. Bon appetit.